Hey guys, MC Stu here, and today we are going to take a look at the Jarok Alliance Carrier. So I just got this unlocked on my main account. A couple days behind on unlocking it. I had skipped a day or two, just got a little bit busy. But I have it unlocked now, and I wanted to put together a budget build for all you entry-level players or free-to-play players. I will give some other options if you have more resources or additional rep gear that can be used in place of some of what we have on the ship. So to give you a little bit of flexibility there, I am using one C-Store trait or ship trait, so it's not completely free to play. If you don't have that trait, which we'll get into, use what you have. That makes sense. Or if you don't have any traits, you're brand new, then you won't slot any traits, and that's okay. There's nothing on the build. There's quite a bit that synergizes, but if you're missing this piece or that piece or a particular trait, it's not going to change the build overall. I don't want to say it won't affect the build because they do help the performance overall, but I'm not using any kind of stringed proccing chains of abilities and traits and things like that on this build. So let's start off with the way the ship looks. At first, I was really not a big fan, if I'm being 100% honest. It's grown on me a little bit. I think it looks really good from the very top, and it looks really good from the very bottom. Head on, and kind of from this side view, this just kind of looks a little funky to me, but you know, it's a hybrid there with you know, different species technologies and stuff. So that's what we get, and it was a free ship, and I am thankful for it. So pretty cool. Something to add here to the free-to-play account. Whenever we get anything free like this, it's very, very nice. So let's go ahead and jump into it, guys. Let's start with the gear. All right. So this is a carrier. I have the stock pets on it is what I used. If you can upgrade these pets, do so. You can upgrade pets. We'll just kind of start with that a little out of order, but you can upgrade pets from the Dilithium store. So if you click on the Dilithium store here and we go to hangar pets, any ships that you own that have a particular kind of pet will be listed here. So if I didn't have this ship, this pet would not be listed. So if you don't have the ship and you're looking for the pets, because the pets are pretty good, this is not going to be here. So since I have the ship, it is here. I don't have enough dilithium to upgrade them at the moment, so that's why we have the stock ones. But this is where you can get the next ones up, the very rare, and you can get ultra rare ones from your fleet starbase. So that's where you would go to manage pets, upgrade pets, those kinds of things. So let's go ahead and take a look at the gear that we're running here. So this is a phaser build. I went with fire at will. Being that we have pets kind of all over the place, I just really enjoy the fire at will. You could go beam overload with this as well. It'd probably do a little more damage that way and attract a little less threat. So if you're having a problem with that, just that alone would make a big difference. But I personally, for something like this, just like the fire at will. So what I'm using in the front is an agony phaser. You can use any phaser you want here. This is just what I already had, so I used it. If you have the Terran Task Force phaser beam array, you're going to want to use that. I do have it, but for the purposes of this video, I just went with basic stuff. So Terran Task Force phaser, if you have that, you're going to want that on any kind of phaser beam array build. That's number one. Next, we're using the Prolonged Engagement Phaser. This comes from the Phoenix boxes, which you can also purchase from the Dilithium store here. If we go to Special Items, you can buy them individually, or you can buy 10 packs for a little bit of a discount, and you can get that out of those boxes. I believe it comes from a very rare, which is pretty easy and straightforward to get. Next, we're using a rep item. This comes from the Disco rep. This is the Dark Matter Quantum Torpedo. And very, very good torpedo. If you have this rep all the way up, I would get the Lorca console and slot that either in the tactical, or if you do an X upgrade on the ship, put it there. The two-piece on this is going to give you a very nice stacking critical severity. Again, I didn't want to slot you know, a bunch of stuff that was way high up on the rep levels, just so this was fairly straightforward for your budget builds and you know, beginner build players. All right, next we are using the Bajor Defense Deflector. This comes from the mission And I know, guys, we go through this every time. I cannot pronounce this dang name. So I'm going to show you where it's at. This is in the New Frontiers arc. And it is Sela and Charabadis. Okay, so that's as close as we're going to get, and I'm not going to try that again, guys. So play this mission through. There's actually a 3-piece set you can get out of this: the deflector, the shield, and also the impulse engine. I opted to use the deflector and the warp core, and the warp core you can also get from a Phoenix box at very rare. And I'm using both of these. The warp core itself, there's better options by itself, but I went this route for the 2-piece with these 2 items. The 2-piece is going to give us a boost to phaser damage. It can also give you a boost to disruptor and plasma damage, so that's always an option as well for those kinds of energy weapon variants. And the reason I went that route is because I wanted to be able to slot the Solanae defense sets, or 2-piece sets. We're using the engine and we are using the shield. This comes from the Iconian arc from the last mission, Midnight. You'll just rerun it a couple times. The engine has a nice visual effect, and let's just take a look at that. So you'll kind of see it glowing a little bit red. I use these a lot in the vanity slot, especially on my paid account. But when we move, it gives a nice kind of fiery looking trail there, which I think looks really, really cool. Anyways, that's kind of a side note, but if you're looking for some Space Barbie, those are some good free engines that you can get for that. And they're not half bad engines by themselves either. One of the main reasons for using them, apart from the set bonus, which we'll take a look at in a minute, is this has a proc chance when hit by directed energy attack. You have a 25% chance to gain plus 4% turn rate, also some defense rating for 15 seconds. It's not huge, but you can definitely feel it. And this also stacks up to 5 times. So at 4%, you're up to potentially 20%, which you can really feel that when that kicks in. So if you're starting to get beat up a little bit, this will help you maneuver around and get away or reposition. The shield itself, again, isn't anything super special. It's a decent shield by itself. But the main reason for slotting both of these items is going to be for the 2-piece, which is giving us a very hefty plus 30 to kinetic damage resistance and 25 to energy damage resistance, which is very, very nice. On the budget level, building your resistances up is really the best bang for buck, in my opinion, for survivability. So resistance, the way it works is the more resistance you have, the slower your hit points will dissipate as you're taking damage. So you can see between that set and a couple of these other consoles, which we'll take a look at, we have some pretty nice looking resistances. I wouldn't try and push these much higher than this using consoles and things like that, because this is based off of skill points. Your skill points have a diminishing return when it comes to the percentage of resistance that you have. So I wouldn't try and build too hard past this point. If this ship did more damage than what it does, this high of resistance ratings would not be necessary. Other options for this, if I were going to build this and rep stuff, at max level wasn't an issue, and fleet stuff, I would be using the Colony Deflector. I would be using the competitive engine from the rep, and then I would be using the 2-piece disco core and shield is what I would be using if you have those unlocked. In the back, we are using another Agony Phaser. Again, you can use any phaser here. It'll work just the same. Next, we're using the Quantum Phase Beam Array. We're using this in a 2-piece with the console, which we'll take a look at in a second, and this comes from the mission Sunrise from Future Proof. Let's just verify that here. Future Proof, Sunrise. There's actually a 3-piece set that's in here that's pretty decent. The console is good. Phaser Beam Array is good. The torpedo is okay if you don't have anything else. There's also a cannon, dual cannon variant as well. So if you're building a cannon build and need a free one of those, that's a great mission to run and pick that up. Next, we have the Trilithium Enhance Omni. This comes from the mission Beyond the Nexus from the Future Proof arc. Very good Omni. This is here specifically for the proc chance to increase fire cycling haste. So there's nothing like, activating fire at will and getting this to proc and boost that firing cycle haste, and it's already shooting a lot of beams out all over the place, and with this procking, that's going to make that even more intense, which does a lot more damage, and it feels really nice and looks really nice to look at. In the devices slot, we are using the Deuterium Surplus for the extra speed boost when we need it, Subspace Field Modulator for a little bit of extra resistance if needed, which again, at where we're at, we're not getting a ton out of that, but hey, why not? And then we're using a battery energy amplifier for the extra energy weapon damage boost that you get from this. Engineering slots. We are using the Trilithium D plating. This is an excellent survivability console. It's a good filler console if you have some of this other stuff, or you just don't have everything that you want, or you're dying a little bit. This console gives a nice boost to your damage resistance. It gives an excellent boost to your hull cap. It gives a very good boost to your shield cap, and it also boosts your auxiliary power. So it pairs pretty well with this console down here, the Temporal Disentanglement Suite, as it scales the critical chance and severity boost that you get from it based off of your auxiliary power. So those two synergize together pretty nicely. Next, we're using House Martog defense configuration. This comes from the mission Brushfire out of the New Frontiers arc as well. And this is mainly here for some additional survivability. We're also getting some additional engine power out of it, as well as flight turn rate, which in a big old girl like this, you really need that to get the ship positioned where you want it. And I have to say, flying it through this patrol, which I'll show here at the end, it didn't feel real bad at all flying. I mean, it moved around pretty decently. Next, we're using the 0-point energy conductor. This is from the Romulan rep. You can get this after completing Tier 1, which only takes, I think, 2 days to complete. And this is here for the extra power that we're getting to all the subsystems. And we get some drain out of it, which isn't doing really much on this particular build. The big reason this is here is for the plus 2.4% critical chance, which is a nice boost. And that amount is at maximum as this is upgraded in Epic. And let's talk about that for a minute. So on a lot of the gear that I have, it's Epic. If it wasn't Epic, it would still be on this ship. So sometimes I'll get comments where, well, you said it's budget, but it's all Epic'd out, and that's hard to get. And you're not wrong. It is, it takes some work to get it there, but that doesn't change anything about this build. I wouldn't use something else just because, this particular item was not boosted all the way. And it's my intention to say, you can work towards a build like this, continually upgrade it, and here is the potential of the build. So I'm trying to maximize these builds out in the way that I have them put together to as much as I can. Now, my weapons aren't maxed out, all of them but one, but most of my consoles are. And if these were maxed out, they would be on this budget build, and it would still be a budget build. I'm just showing you what the top end of that budget build could be. Okay, moving on to the reinforced armament. This is a part of the set with the Trilithium Omni. The console itself is, again, a good survivability console. It's giving us a very good boost to our power transfer rate. It's giving us some additional stats onto our hull regeneration and also our hull cap. So we're getting a decent amount of hit points added to this along with the Martog console. I would run either one of these probably by themselves if I only had one on a budget build like this, because individually they're decent consoles and weapons, and they're free for mission drops. But when you pair these two together, the set bonus you get is a plus 5% fire cycling haste for energy weapons and some additional flight speed. So this is an all-the-time boost for all the weapons on your ship, all the energy weapons that is. So that's making all of our energy weapons fire 5% faster than they otherwise normally would. This is from Beyond the Nexus as well, just like the Omni. All right, next we are using the console that came with the ship. So this is giving us a pretty nice boost to our critical chance. We're getting some additional auxiliary out of it. So again, paired with the Temporal Disentanglement Suite, this is pairing together with that very nicely, and we'll talk a little more in depth about that in a moment. As for the clicky, I've played with it a little bit. I haven't done a lot of testing in like a parse map to see how well it works. But for a carrier build, and especially on the budget level, this console by itself with this critical chance boost is excellent. It comes with the ship, and it's right on par. It's actually a little bit more than what we're getting from the 0-point module. So especially on the budget level here, guys, I would slot this on all my builds. That is a really good boost just by itself, that critical chance addition that you're getting there. And again, it pairs very well with the disentanglement suite. Again, as for the clicky, it's doing 2 self and allied players within 20 kilometers plus 20% critical chance for 5 seconds. So that's a massive boost for a moment there. It's resetting hangar pet recharge time. So again, that synergizes obviously with the ship it came on as a carrier. And then we have a 30% chance. What is that for? Critical hit chance for 20 seconds. So what is that for? Okay, so that's 2-player. That's to player hangar pets. Okay, so the second part of this clicky is for your hangar pets and summons within 20 kilometers. So I'm assuming that's going to also cover my any kind of other clicky console, like I don't know, the Delta Flyers, or like the fleet support, maybe photonic fleet as well. So I'm assuming summons means any other combat pet that you bring in. That's giving it a massive boost of 30% critical hit chance. I wish it was giving me that. And it's for 20 seconds as well. So that's quite a bit, guys. And then placate foes within 10 kilometers for 20 seconds, which is also excellent. So you could use this, to boost your damage output, your pet's damage output, and it can be used as a little bit of a oh crap button. If you're getting focused real hard, you can click this and placate everybody around you. Shoot, almost everybody on the map. Well, I guess it's at 10 kilometers on this. So anyways, this is something I kind of overlooked, if I'm being 100% honest. This is a good console. For a free console, this is very, very good. Can we equip it to any other ships? It doesn't show any restrictions, so I will be using this on most of my other builds purely for the passive boost on this thing, which is really, really nice. All right, and that's the sensor suspension burst. Just so if anyone's not watching and they're just listening, that is what that is called. All right, next let's go ahead and talk about the temporal disentanglement suite. So this comes from the mission Butterfly out of the Iconian Arc. This is a part of a Tetrion set. You can get a Tetrion Omni and a Warp Core. It boosts Tetrion when you have the full set. The console by itself, especially on the budget level, is pretty decent. So what we're getting is a boost to our auxiliary power. We are getting some maximum shield capacity, and then we're also getting a scaling critical chance and critical severity based on our aux power. Now, I am running my aux power I have it set as low as it will go. Because for me, it's not worth putting more into that and giving up, say, flight speed, and we certainly don't want to give up weapons power because that'll dramatically reduce the outgoing damage that you're doing. So what we get out of this is we're getting a bunch of bonuses from the other from this console itself, from the last console we discussed, from the Trilithium console, and we're also getting a boost out of the 0 point console here as well across all of our subsystems. So even with that being set at 0, I'm still at 55. So we're getting about half of those boosts out of this. And unfortunately, this tooltip, it doesn't scale. It doesn't actually show you what you're getting out of it, which is kind of a bummer. So we could turn up and down the aux power or take it off and see what changes here in order to calculate that out, but there's no direct way to just look at what you're getting out of this. So I'm assuming at about half that aux power, we're getting about 1.75 on the critical chance, and we're getting about 5% on the critical severity, which is a nice little boost on top of the other passive boosts that we're getting from this. Definitely makes this console worth running on the budget end. All right, next on our science consoles, this is a universal console, the quantum phase converter. This comes or goes with this beam array set that we discussed earlier. And again, just to recap, that comes from Sunrise out of the Future-Proof Arc. This passively is giving us a 26.3% phaser damage boost at Epic. It's giving us also some additional auxiliary power. So again, it is synergizing here with the temporal disentanglement suite. We are also getting a huge chunk of drain expertise, which again on this is not real useful. Let's take a look at the 2P set. So 2P set with that console and the middle beam array here in the back, we are getting 15 accuracy. So this is skill points, not percent. And we're getting double the potential for the proc on the phaser weapon, which is nice. So basically it does shield stripping is what the proc is on that. So not huge game breaking, this 2-piece, but hey, every little bit adds up and counts. All right, next. This is going to be next to the trait that we're using. This is going to be one of the more expensive parts of this. If you don't have it, don't use it. Use something else like, what could we use here? Instead of this, you could use we could bring one of the universal consoles down and use some additional resistance, although I don't know if I would do that, or maybe one of the consoles that boost weapons power. Let me know what other options you guys would think of using here. But the reason this is here, even though this is a lockbox item, you can buy it off the exchange. When I made this video, I checked, it was at 10 million. It'll probably go up a little bit if we get a lot of views on this, but it will come back down. These are readily available, and I've seen them as low as 2 million. Let's say 10 million holds as an average. You're looking at about, a week or so of just playing, doing your tour of the galaxy. If you have more than one tune that you play and do dailies on, you can get 10 million very, very quickly. I'll put a link down in the description for, I have a video specifically on, I earn 1 million credits in like 25, 30 minutes. So I'll put that down in the description for you guys. So this is one of the only consoles in the game. There's not a lot in the game in general that affects pets. That's what makes it hard on these carrier builds. I've had a lot of requests for it, but what ends up happening is I end up building the ship basically like I would kind of anything else. It just has pets. There are a couple traits. One is from the mirror angle that just came with the new Terran pack. That trait is very, very good for hangar pets. I mean, hugely good for hangar pets. Superior aerial denial. There is a personal space trait that you can use, and I think it is scrambled fighters. It's outrageously expensive on the exchange. It comes from Delta Duty Officer packs is how you can get those. I don't have that or the superior aerial denial on this free-to-play account since I didn't spend any money and I didn't buy the pack. But this is something that you can get, that anybody can get, and they can grind this out fairly quickly and get enough credits to buy this item. So what is this item? This is the Universal Swarmer Matrix. And the reason this is on the ship is because it gives 30% turn speed, flight speed, and damage to your hangar pets and targetable torpedoes. It also gives plus 50 projectile weapons training. I use this on my Torp builds. I use this on my paid meta Torp builds as well. So budget Torp builds, meta Torp builds, I use this quite a bit. And I'm surprised that it's so inexpensive at 10 million. I know that might sound a lot to some of you if you're new, but that's not that much, and you can earn that very quickly. I think part of it is it's in the what is it called? Like it used to be called cross faction pack or salvage consoles, whatever. Out of the lockbox, when you don't get this direct, you get a pack that you can just open, right? So you can just pick this out of any of those packs. So there's quite a few of them out there, and I think they'll continue to be because they sell very well, but they're still very inexpensive. So I would highly recommend picking this up for your hangar pets. There's really nothing else on this build or anything else available to me that helps me in terms of the fact that this is a carrier. And I would really like to see Cryptic do a little bit more. We talk about, when's carriers going to get a buff and these kinds of things. And I know they're aware of it, and I know they're concerned about balancing and going too far, but they got to do something. Add a secondary deflector, make it a 4-4, or give us some more traits, personal space traits, consoles. It doesn't have to be, OP or game breaking, but give us some more stuff that I can put on this build that is, carrier centric, that'll help, a build like this. Because as of right now, this is pretty much it. So if you're doing a carrier build and that's, specifically what you're building around, it is really this console here that you're going to want. Torp build would also be an option on this because because this synergizes with it. But this is one console, so really you can kind of build this however you want. I went this direction because I like it. There's already a lot of pets hanging out, and having that fire at will spray going all over the place just fits for me when I'm playing and having fun. All right. Lastly, tactical consoles. I am using 2 vulnerability locators. These come from the Fleet Spire. These are here for the phaser damage and critical chance. And then lastly, I am using a colony tactical console. This is boosting the primary as phaser damage, and secondary it gives us a projectile damage boost. The reason that this is being used over the locator is if we look down at the bottom on the tooltip here, we have a 25% chance to self to apply restorative protomatter matrix. So what that means is I have, it says plus 2,640 hull healed, 5% of maximum hull every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. And this is going to happen anytime that we activate a energy weapon firing mode. So if we use the fire at will, that's going to give us this chance for this to proc. Now, if you have more of these, so let's say you're having some problems dying, and if you put more of these on, this chance and the boost you get does stack. So a lot of the heavy tanks, we've kind of moved away in terms of tanking in general from these, but in the past and for your heavy tanks, we will still use these quite a bit because once you start stacking these up, I mean, you'll see you're starting to die, and boom, it's like it just boosts you back up really fast. And if you pair that with the Tilly shield and the Disco core, the 2-piece, that gives you just a massive regen passive boost to your hull. So when one of these procs, the 2-piece that you're getting from the Disco set here for the core and the shield, those synergize together and you're almost unkillable. I mean, you can still die, but I mean, we're talking it just night and day difference. So, if I were going just, ham on, using all rep gear and all of that, like I said before, I most likely would be using the Tilly shield Disco 2-piece here. And I probably, I don't know, maybe I would go 2 of these and maybe 1 locator. You'll have to just play with that and just see. I mean, some of that's going to depend on how well you can manage your other abilities and making sure you stay alive, how you're piloting your ship and angling so you're getting, front and back weapons to fire. I mean, that's really just going to kind of depend on you. All right, let's take a look at skills. So for specialization, I'm running strategist and intel. Skill trees, the same one I'm always using on the free-to-play. It's kind of a catch-all. I do EPG and tank with this without any problem in elite. So this is a fairly decent catch-all skill tree. Next on traits, I am using all stock traits, and we'll just quickly go through them. So we're using beam training. We're using operative. We are using fleet coordinator. We are using beam barrage. So this is not a stock trait. It is when you so you get it for free when you reach in the crafting school on beam energy weapons crafting school. Once you get to level 15, it unlocks this. Next, we are using bulkhead technicians for some extra hull. We are using innocuous, some additional critical severity and threat reduction, which is always helpful. Thrill seeker for some extra movement. Shield technician for a little bit of extra shield. And then this is also paid off the exchange. This is like crazy cheap, well under $1 million. It's not game breaking or anything like that, but basically it's adding a little bit of extra debuff to our targets that we're hitting. So with fire at will, we're getting a little bit. I mean, it's small. It's 0.5 all damage resistance rating for 10 seconds. So it's not huge, but that's why I guess it's so cheap. So if you need to fill in some gaps, if you don't have any of the, any kind of premium stuff over the stock in terms of your personal space traits, this is one you could pick up. Again, it's not going to change, everything, but this thing does stack 25 times. So that does add up to being fairly decent at 12.5 reduction. It's just, are they going to be alive that long? That kind of thing. Everything adds up. So here's a cheap option, something extra you can add to your inventory. All right, Starship traits. So the only one I'm using C-Store-wise is going to be from the Arbiter. It is Emergency Weapons Cycle, and this is like my #1 pick. If you look at my top picks for C-Store ships and traits in terms of utility, versatility, there isn't an energy build out there that isn't going to be running this. This is really, it's always in the #1 spot because you just need it. It's not OP, it's not game breaking. It's just kind of one of those things that's been in for so long, and it just makes such a big difference that it's really kind of the starting place of any kind of energy build. So what this does is it reduces your weapons power cost by 50% for 30 seconds, and it gives you a plus 20% fire cycle haste for energy weapons for 30 seconds. And this is going to happen anytime that you use emergency power to weapons. And with a 30 second duration, and with the emergency power to weapons at 45, even paired with Photonic Officer 1, I'm using Photonic Officer 2, this is cooled down before this trait has ran out, and this is being refreshed, and so essentially this trait continues to run constantly. And so a reduction in 50% of your power cost is massive. 20% fire cycling haste is huge. You can have, the top build out there with everything on it, and if we take this off, you are just massively going to underperform, even with all the other super high-end expensive traits. There's nothing that really takes the place of this particular item here. So this does, like I said, this is a paid ship, C-store ship. If you don't have it, slot something else, leave it blank. This isn't going to change the build. It will change your performance, but it's not going to, there's certain things where it's like, okay, if I didn't have this, then I wouldn't use this other thing, because they're all kind of working in tandem, and without this one thing, this other stuff is a waste. That's not the case on anything on this particular build. Okay, next. This comes from unlocking Strategist in your specialization. This is improved unconventional tactics. What this is doing is turning our brace for impact into a plus 20% bonus all damage for 15 seconds. So you'll see I have that sitting up here. Normally this is used if you're getting beat up and you need some extra hit points and some damage resistance. You'd click this. By having this starship trait slotted, it also then turns it into a clicky for a very decent amount of bonus damage. And that comes from just filling out your specialization. So Strategist and Intel is generally what I recommend to start with. This is one of the secondary onlys, so it doesn't take a lot. You just get this filled out and it unlocks that trait for you. Next, we are using improved command frequency. This comes from the command spec, which is the same place there that we were just looking at, just in the command. It is a primary, so there is command frequency and there's improved command frequency. So you'll get one, and then you'll get an upgraded version of it when you complete all of it. So half of it you'll get one, complete all of it, you'll get the better version. I believe that's how it works. Let me know in the comments if I'm just totally blowing smoke on that. So what this does is this reduces the cooldown to call in your fleet support. So normally fleet support has, I think, like a 15-minute cooldown or 12-minute cooldown. It's long. This brings it, reduces it by 10 minutes. So that means, in a 2 or 3 minute run, you could actually bring that in twice. What it also does is it removes the low health restriction that this has. So generally, you can only use fleet support if you're under 50% health, which makes it kind of an oh crap button, which generally, when you call this in, it just generates more threat and you die faster. So by slotting this, I can now call on these anytime that I want. I don't have to be low health in order to use it. I think that synergizes well with the carrier build, because I already have all these pets out. I can call in even more pets, and then the console that comes with this ship should affect this as well. All right, moving on. I have carrier wave shield hacking. This has been an interesting trait. It's been at 50 million, and it's been all the way down to 200,000. Last I checked, it was under 1 million. We're using it on supports on the real high end. In terms of using it on like a primary DPS Torp build meta build, I think we're shying away from that, although I'm using it on my free-to-play Torp build, and it's doing very, very well. Because it's so cheap, starship traits are extremely valuable, and this actually works pretty well. If you're not out there trying to min-max or any of that kind of thing, then, hey, a free trait that works pretty well is great. And so I have this on all my tunes on my free-to-play because you can pick it up so inexpensive. What this does is activating a tractor beam or intel ability will shut the enemy shields off for 5 seconds, and then it'll also give you plus 30% kinetic damage with tractor beam. So it makes your tractor beam do a ton more damage, and it turns the shields off of your enemy. And that works for everybody on the team. So, you know, if you hit this and trigger it on, say, a larger enemy, and then you have a torpedo spread or torpedo high yield go out, that's going to do an enormous amount of damage without having any shields up. And everybody else hitting it with anything, especially kinetic, is going to do quite a bit of damage. So running this, I think, is a good option, especially on the free-to-play and the budget end, because it's a very inexpensive trait. Again, this is going to fluctuate, so you know, I'm sure it'll fluctuate back up and down. But right now, this is coming out of the current lockbox, and I think there's just a ton of them, and most people just aren't using it, and so they're getting sold and they're going fairly inexpensive. So, all right, for space reputation, let's take a look at this. Some of these are all at a tier 2 level because I have all the space reputation out. Some of these become available about midway up. Some of them are going to be available near the top end. So these are, you know, half of these are going to be higher up unlocks for your reputation system. They're still free, but they are going to take a little more time. So let's just take a quick look at these. We have advanced targeting systems. This is for the extra critical severity. We have precision. This is for the extra critical chance. Next, we have radiant detonation matrix. I'm not exactly sure why this is here, but we got a 2% chance to do radiation damage in a 1 kilometer radius at the target and removes 1 buff. Okay, I don't know if this triggers on every fire at will hit. If it does, then that synergizes very well, and we'll stick with it. Next, we have magnified firepower. This is for just a straight 6.3% bonus damage to weapons. And then lastly, we're using Tyler's Duality, and this is giving us a very nice boost to critical chance. This is scales off of your hit points. So we're getting plus 4.2% critical chance, which is a very, very nice boost. All right, last, let's look at the station. So for tactical, I am running Photon Spread, running the Dark Matter up front. I am using Chemosite 2. Chemosite 2 is a paid item. If you don't have this, you could put High Yield in. And I apologize, I'm moving around here a little bit, guys. You could put High Yield in and maybe rotate between the two depending on a target. You could even put Beam Overload 1 in. Say if Scatter or at Fire at Will is going to be your main, but you want a secondary if you need to focus, or you could flip that, right? And if it was going to be a Beam Overload primary build, go with 3, and then maybe go with the Fire at Will at the number 2 slot here. Sometimes it's nice to have both of those, especially in some of the random TFOs, you know, like you get caught up with Tholians and you're in a web and you're at, you know, Beam Overload only. You're sitting in that web until it expires, you know, because without Fire at Will, it's hard to target any of the things making the web. So having kind of an option between those, depending on the situation you're running into, is nice. Chemosite is a nice ability to have. It can be pricey on the exchange, anywhere between 5 to 20 million. So you'll have to just keep an eye out. If I only had Chemosite 1, I would use it in the instant slot and bump spread up. In fact, if I had a choice, I would do that. Chemosite procs very nice with the Dark Matter Torpedo, especially under spread. All right, next I have Tactical Team. To be honest, I didn't have anything else I could put here, so it's Tac Team, and I'm just using it. I just don't see a huge benefit to it personally. And then lastly, we're using Attack Pattern Beta for the debuff that we're getting to the enemy. We are using, for engineering, emergency powered engines. This is giving us a refresh time on evasive maneuvers. So I have Duty Officer. We'll go through this on every video from the Phoenix pack boxes, and we'll take a look at him when we get to Duty Officers. But if I run evasive maneuvers, that has the duration that it runs, and then once it's finished, it goes to, I believe, like 45 seconds or so. Yeah, 45 seconds. And then if I click emergency power to engines, that is going to be... I'm stupid. All right, let's emergency power to engines. There we go. And that is right off cooldown and ready to use again. So that comes from the Con Officer, Duty Officer out of the Phoenix packs. And again, the Phoenix packs gear, other than the Epic and the very rare, ultra rare that is, the rest of it's pretty easy to get, especially if you're buying them 10 at a time, and it's worth it for a few pieces of the gear that are in there, and then the upgrades if you need to upgrade your items. Next, we are using Reverse Shield Polarity. This is a nice oh crap button if you're starting to take a lot of damage, and you go ahead and click that. That will give you some good protection, and it looks pretty cool when it's up, I think. So good ability to have there on the bar. And let's pull the build back up. And lastly, for engineering, we're using emergency power to weapons 3. this emergency powered weapons, if this only had a lieutenant engineering, then it would be emergency powered weapons too. So this is always my primary on any kind of energy weapon build, is that I need the highest one of this in first, and then everything else is filled in around it. All right, for science, we are using tractor beam, and that is to proc the shield hacking trait that we discussed. Next, we're using hazard emitters, and I have this on my spam bar. It's a nice heal over time, and it also is giving us some extra critical chance because we are running the strategist specialization. So we're getting a little bit of extra damage boost out of that from that critical chance, and we're getting an ongoing heal over time. Photonic Officer 2 is next, and we are using this for the cooldown. So this is giving us a 3% cooldown reduction on all our bridge officer abilities, 3% once every second. So 3% is not a lot, but it is when it's taking every single second. That adds up to quite a bit. So you're looking at, on some of these abilities, shaving off a third to a half of the actual cooldown time. There is a cycle to it, though, because the cooldown for this ability is 30 seconds, and it only runs for 20 seconds. So there is a 10-second period where you are not getting that extra cooldown. So do remember that every cycle or two, you'll actually have a little bit of a downtime in between some of your abilities. It depends on your rotation and how much you've clicked those things and when you've clicked them. But just know that, and there is nothing at all in the game that increases the cooldown time of Photonic Officer. All right, lastly, we're using Gravity Well. This is here to get everybody bulked up together and shoot them all in one place where, fire at will, so it's not as big of a deal. But I thought that was a nice little touch, since this kind of leans science. I mean, it leans science because it has a lieutenant commander. I mean, there's nothing else about the ship that's science. But anyways, Gravity Wells are fun. It pulls everything in and helps control the environment, which is always helpful. Lastly, in the Ensign Science seat, we are running Concentrated Firepower 1. This isn't like a make or break here, but the main reason it's here is because when we mark a target, we're getting some extra torpedo damage, which, again, this isn't a torpedo build, so it's nice. We have a torpedo. The main reason is once every 6 seconds, it generates a torpedo high yield 1. So I'm getting a free high yield shot just by running this item, and that doesn't do anything to cool down your spread or any of the other abilities that you're using. All right, lastly, let's take a look at our duty officers, or as TriZander likes to call him, his doofs, and I don't know, I like the way it sounds. Shout out to TriZander. Check him out, guys, if you haven't. Streams every night on Twitch, and he has a growing YouTube channel that is very, very good. I'll put a link in the description for you guys. All right, for our doffs or our doofs, I'm stealing it. Sorry, buddy. We have the Con Officer that I referred to. This is from the Phoenix boxes here. Again, you can buy Phoenix boxes from the Dilithium store. And these come from, I believe, the rare. So he's really easy to get. It's one of the first things as soon as I unlock duty officers on a new tune that I get. He's on every single one of my builds. Law, he is giving us a chance to reduce the reload time on our torpedo. He comes from a mission drop in I think it's the second mission on Nimbus. That'll be in your available tab. If you're not a Romulan, if you're a Romulan, it'll be in your story arc. So you'll see that and you're just going to get it. You don't have a choice. It just gives it to you. Next, I'm using a damage control officer. These can come from recruitment assignments. You can buy them off the exchange. And what this is doing is anytime that I activate a subsystem ability, so emergency power to weapons, emergency power to engines, emergency power to structural integrity, it's giving us a chance to reduce the cooldown on all the other emergency power to whatever abilities. In the past, before Boimler and even before like Ox to Bat, or if you couldn't afford the Ox to Bat, because the duty officers for that for cooldown were really expensive, we would stack up 3 of these. That's the maximum you can put in of any one kind of duty officer, and that would keep abilities up pretty often, at least in terms of your emergency power to weapons, which is an extremely powerful bridge officer ability. Lastly, we have a gravimetric science officer here. You get her at level 63, I want to say. This comes just from a drop. that is given to you as you level up once you go over level 60. I think it's 63, 62 or 63. Let me know in the comments, guys. And what this does is it gives you a chance to create additional gravity wells. So if you were using a gravity well like we are, this will give us a chance to give us additional gravity wells that will last an additional amount of time. This also works with the gravimetric torpedo, which is a torpedo that can create gravity wells as well. All right, lastly, if we take a look at our endeavors, my free-to-play, we are not very high on here. We are in a lot of the things that I care about more, but we got a long way to go. Make sure you're doing these, guys. They add up. I've really slacked on my free-to-play. Even it being at less than half of this completed, it still has a huge effect on all of your tunes across your entire account. So make sure that you are doing these. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the run, which is actually I did right before I started recording this here against the Tholians, and we'll see how this ship performs. All right. Well, as you can see, this did very well, and it's a lot of fun to fly. I really like the amount of pets that we have flying all over the place. It just makes it look like you're out there wiping the floor, especially a fire at will going. It just feels great, and it's a lot of fun to fly. I did take this through a advanced ISA, and I did about 70K with it with the wrong specs, specializations. So I think, and it was a good run. So, 70, 80K is probably, what you could expect. If you were going to be running a lot of advanced content, I definitely would look at upgrading, the shield and warp core to the disco set, and maybe picking up another one of the fleet colony tactical consoles for a little bit of extra survivability. You do that, and I think you'll be having a lot of fun. So there it is, guys. We're calling it budget because there is one paid trait on it. Again, if you don't have that trait, that's okay. Fill it in with what you have, or if you don't have anything, leave it blank. The build stands as is without any of that stuff. So we can call this free to play. We can call it budget. I just wouldn't call it pay to win because it's not that on this particular build here. So I hope that was helpful, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know what you guys are doing with this ship. I'm always interested on the carrier stuff because it just seems like there needs to be more, and I really hope they add more to it. Especially since the flight deck carriers came out. They were flight wings or whatever they were before, but basically flight deck carriers are now, carriers with a 4-4 and 2 hangar bays. So it kind of put, straight up carriers in a weird place where they're kind of behind. Because if you're in a flight deck carrier, then you just have an advantage because you have 2 more weapons than what you would in a standard carrier. But the carriers tend to look really cool. I like the whole premise of it. I just would like to see them do a little bit more for it. Give them some love. You don't have to make them OP. Just give us some more gear that affects hangar pets that we can play with and add to these. I think that would make it quite a bit of fun. You don't even have to mess with the ship. Just give us some more gear that we can get a hold of to build out these carrier builds and go in and do the thing with them. So, all right, guys, I really appreciate you watching. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you very, very much. If you haven't subbed to the channel already, I'd certainly appreciate it if you do. If you have questions, put them down in the comments. There's also a link to our Discord. If you want some more in-depth conversation on these builds, there's an excellent community in there, and we're all more than happy to chat with you and answer your questions and help you out in progressing through the game. So until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching. Check out these other 2 videos. Both of these are free 100% mission drops, and I think you'll find them pretty valuable. Until next time, stay safe. Have a good one.